Hello everyone, this is part 18 of What If Naruto Had a Secret, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. A lot of things had changed for Naruto since the academy graduation. He'd become stronger. He'd learned what it took to be a ninja, and he'd grown close to his new sensei and somewhat closer to his teammates. Hell, not even 24 hours ago, he had finally been told by a girl that he was more important than Sasuke. So, yes, much of Naruto's life had changed. And yet, one thing remained the same. Naruto was one of the few shinobi who was actually a deep sleeper. That was how he slept through the alarm when it had started going off 3 hours earlier than he was used to. Then again, Naruto with Anko's help had set his body on a schedule, and, 3 hours after his alarm had gone off, he woke up almost instantly. It took him a few minutes to reorient himself and another minute or so to notice the angle of the dull light coming through his window. He scowled, rolled over, looking at his clock in annoyance, before getting up. Selecting the kunai he kept on hand, he threw them at the familiar targets in his room, still missing all of them. As part of his routine, he padded into the bathroom for his shower and to briefly study the Konoha scar on his forearm. Finished, he dressed in his Kami blessed orange and sought out breakfast. 4 servings of ramen and milk later, he was walking out of his apartment and heading into the nearly empty streets. He had planned on getting some training in before the meeting Anko had ordered him to. Judging by the sky and the people around him, he might still be able to do that. It would have to be something simple. Maybe just a little sparring with Kage Bunshin while water walking. The best place for that was the hot springs a block over. Setting off at a trot, he idly thought about eating with Ino yesterday. By the time they had made it back to Konoha, it had been evening. Dinner had been unusual to say the least. It had been so strange to have someone his own age, let alone a girl, sitting next to him. It had made him self-conscious, too. It was probably the first time he had made sure to keep from spilling anything on himself. The strangest part, however, had been the way Ayami and that old man had smiled at them. Shaking it off, while deciding that old people were just weird, he focused instead on sneaking into the hot springs. He had not so long ago, when he had been creating his no jutsu, been caught and banned. So if he was caught, well, he didn't want to think about it. A few quick tricks of the trade to distract and he slipped past the hired guard. Grinning, Naruto prepared for his sparring session when, well, teenage instincts kicked in. He was 13, after all, and it was pointless to deny that Naruto, like most teenagers, was more than slightly interested in the opposite S. Now, of course, he would deny that outside of what he had seen between couples on the streets, he wasn't entirely sure what to do with a girl. But he was interested. Applying his now beloved camouflage technique, he slinked through the brightening bath-house area, intent on the sounds of women talking and more than a few splashes. Almost as if he were drawn to it, he approached the side of the building where he remembered the peephole being. A moment later, he was at the very interesting sight of women. It was probably the first time he had ever felt actual appreciation for the female form. Still, it wasn't long before guilt set in and with one too last he moved away from the peephole and began his training. A few minutes later, he was absorbed in his sparring session, or as close to it as possible. He was distracted by rather sounds coming from behind him, but he only had a few minutes to spare. Still, it was getting annoying as hell. Turning in frustration, he marched back to dry land, ready to demand the stop, when he blinked, seeing a white-haired old man dressed in the most outlandish costume he had ever seen. That was beyond or even a prank, that was a crime and wrong. Oi, what the hell are you doing? Be quiet, the man said without turning. I let you have your chance to look. This is for my art. What the hell? You're just some old man. Naruto shouted, pointing a finger in accusation. If you were my age it'd be one thing, but you're old. Crime. It's how I get inspiration. The old man said, turning completely as he flashed his hands through a series of seals before them into the ground an instant before a giant toad appeared from nowhere. Now, stay out of my way, punk. Naruto blinked in surprise as he was lifted off his feet as the toad's tongue into his sea and sent him crashing into the hot water behind him. Sputtering and struggling his way back to the surface, Naruto found himself glaring up at the amused face of the white-haired L. Apparently satisfied, the man banished the toad and turned, heading for the wall and the peephole. Now, if Uzumaki Naruto was one thing besides the next Hokage, it was clever and a master prankster. A moment later he had created a cage bunshin, transformed it with the no jutsu, then had it bump into the side of the bathhouse and shriek the words, "Eek." L. This of course, drew a ton of attention, and the doors in neighboring bathhouses open. The old man, of course, panicked and turned as if to flee the scene of the crime, when Naruto caught him with one of his patented prank jutsu, a kaikutsu no jutsu, which basically applied a third-person komirai to the old man's sandals, exchanging them with a pair of red heels 2 sizes too small. This, in turn, threw Jiraiya off balance, and Naruto, with a grin and quick, no jutsu, Anko variation, departed unaccosted. After all, who in their right mind would try to talk to Anko? Chuckling at his ingenuity over beating that idiot, though the giant toad was a neat trick, he allowed his Anko appearance to crumble so that he was once more Naruto. Thankfully, the streets were still pretty empty, and nobody really paid much attention to him, which was a good thing in his opinion. After all, the no jutsu variation was not something he wanted to be public knowledge. It was bad enough that Anko had learned the no jutsu, but she had helped him develop the no jutsu variation technique, so that was okay. Still, the fewer people who knew about it, the better. He almost shivered to think of what someone like Kiba would do with the ability. Putting aside his thoughts on the technique, he slipped into the semi-dark building of Leaf Central and felt a shiver race up his back. This place felt haunted so early in the morning, but, still, a note from Anko was not something he could ignore. Especially on his first day of active training for that final exam, though he did wonder why Ino and Shino weren't here waiting. Walking past the empty desks and rooms, he gulped, unnerved slightly, and then entered the stairwell that he knew would take him to the Hokage's office. He tried once more to think about what she could want, especially if it involved the Hokage. The last time he had been in a meeting with them, had been told about his bloodline. What would it be this time? Well, he would find out soon enough, he supposed. The hallway seemed to take forever, mostly because he swore he felt like there were a dozen eyes watching him. Still, he kept the uneasy feeling from showing up and, instead, boisterously talked about becoming Hokage. Who knew, maybe the old man was stepping down already for him. However, when he said that out loud, he heard something that sounded suspiciously like a snicker. Glaring at nothing in particular, he opened the door to the Hokage's office with a loud bang, finding not only the Hokage and Anko, but also Kakashi. Oi! Do you want to see me, psycho? Anko grinned slightly at the name. I left ya a note, didn't I, ya little prick? Closing the door with a loud thump, the orange-clad ninja tossed a more civil, good morning, to an amused-looking Hokage and a suspicious-looking Kakashi. Shifting his attention back to the woman, he stretched, popping his back. So. I have a mission, Anko said with a slight scowl. I won't be able to train you. But, I wanted you to train me. Naruto said. Plus Ino-chan and Shino need your help, too. I know, Anko said in annoyance. Kakashi here agreed to take them on while I was gone. That masked L. Naruto shouted, pointing at the man in question. He couldn't believe how this day was going. First that L that had ruined his early morning training, and now this. Naruto, it was the only way to keep my book. Well, it was either this or go on another date with Anko. Coward chose the easy way, Anko remarked flippantly before shaking her head. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you all of this is because I asked an old friend a huge favor. See, I couldn't let just any idiot teach you, Anko explained, grinning faintly at Kakashi's snort of annoyance. So, I asked Jiraiya-sama to tutor you while I was on my mission. Jiraiya. Naruto repeated blankly, the name not clicking for a moment, then suddenly he went rigid. The guy that taught the Yondaime. Yeah, Anko said with some amusement. He owes me, and besides, he's the only one I trust to not ruin everything we've worked on. Whooa! Naruto shouted, glomping Anko before doing a silly little dance, unable to believe that he would be getting the Yondaim's teacher. This would mean that, between Anko and Jiraiya, he could be Hokage by next week. Oh, yeah, he was so going to kick Sasuke's and everyone's Sorry I'm late, a new, though familiar, voice said. I ran into this little prick, and he. Naruto froze and turned, finding himself staring at the old man from the hot springs. Both stared and then simultaneously pointed at each other, voices echoing in unison. Both blinked, stared at each other, then rounded on the others in the room. What the hell is he doing here? They shouted in unison. Anko raised an eyebrow, a smirk on her face. Naruto, meet Jiraiya-sama. Jiraiya-sama, meet Naruto. He's all yours for a month. You be. Both shouted once more, before fleeing the room amid a hail of sharp, pointy objects from Anko. Oi, so why'd we come all the way out here? Naruto asked, glaring at the large, outlandish man. You want to spar or something? Nah, Jiraiya said, waving a hand dismissively. Knowing Anko, I have a pretty good idea what you're capable of. Seeing the boy's inquisitive look, Jiraiya sighed. I'm a Sannin, ya runt, there's no need for me to bat you around. Hey, oh, just be quiet, Jiraiya snapped, glaring at him. Just be happy I don't summon a toad to squish you for ruining my research. You were so were you, Jiraiya countered before waving a hand in dismissal. Anyway, we came out here to work in peace. Plus there's a waterfall nearby, so. Yeah, we'll be. Do you treat all of your students this way? Naruto asked angrily. First off, Jiraiya said, bashing him on top of the head, before striking an impressive pose. Don't interrupt me when I'm speaking. I'm Mount Myoboku Gama's Holy Master Sennin. Also known as the Toad Sennin. Remember it. Whatever, Ero Sennin, Naruto muttered, rubbing his head. Letting that name slide, the Yondaime had called him almost the same thing. The massive man crossed his arms, turning serious. Second off, you're not my student, you're Anko's. I'm not about to take someone else's student. Think of me as a highly overqualified substitute teacher. Then what are you going to teach me? Jiraiya paused, rubbing his chin in thought. To be honest, it had been years since he had taught anybody, but he knew what Anko had told him, so he had a rough idea of what to teach. Still, there were other things to cover and explain before he taught the boy anything. Namely, of course, what the Sandaime and the Kakashi were trying to keep hidden. Oi, Ero Sennin, hold your horses, punk, the Sannin said, sitting on an overturned log and motioning for the blonde to sit down across from him. Look, this is more difficult than just teaching, okay? I have a lot of important things I have to pass along. But for me to do that, you'll have to show some patience, okay? Okay, Naruto said, finally turning serious. We'll start with the basics, Jiraiya said with a slight nod. How many Kage Bunshin can you make at one time? I made 1,000 one time, Naruto admitted while rubbing his chin. Normally though, if I really try, I can make 50 or 100. I see, Jiraiya said, rubbing his own chin in thought, slightly impressed with the number. You know, Hayat said something about how Kage Bunshin can give me knowledge. Yeah, Jiraiya said with a smirk. Kage Bunshin was originally developed as a spying move, but it can be used to speed up certain things, which is how the Yondaime got so strong so quickly. But, not everyone can do it. The chakra requirements are outrageous, and the mental strain is unfathomable. Whoa, yeah, so, we'll keep it safe and go for 100. You shouldn't snap under that strain. Oi, will that be enough? Will 100 clones every day for 30 days be enough? Jiraiya repeated almost hollowly. It's the equivalent of working with 3,000 clones, which is roughly equal to at least a year of solid training on the same techniques. The same techniques. Naruto blinked. I thought you'd teach me all sorts of new stuff. I'll teach you a few useful tricks, Jiraiya admitted. I promise that by the end of the month you'll have everything I teach you as pure instinct, but I wouldn't recommend trying this training trick for another 6 months. You'll have to give your mind time to recover. Well, what are we waiting for? Naruto said, jumping to his feet halfway through the seal for the clones. Jiraiya, in response to this, casually beamed the blonde with a rock between the eyes, knocking him on his A. I thought I told you to be patient, Jiraiya grumbled in annoyance. If it hadn't been for Sarutobi and Anko, they couldn't have paid him to handle this runt. We're not even where I want us to train. I haven't explained how the Cage Bunshin training will work, or anything else I want to say before we even begin training. Well, I don't have time for that. I gotta get stronger. If I don't, then I'll never be Hoka. Jiraiya beamed him with another rock, scowling slightly. First off, runt, it'll be a couple of years before you're anywhere near ready for that job. Second off, patience is a virtue for a ninja. Without it, you'll never get anywhere. Third off, why the hell do you want to be Hokage? Oi. Because it's my dream. Quote. Okay, Jiraiya said with a snort. Why is it your dream? Because. To be Hokage is to be the strongest ninja in the village. Quote. I'm still not following. It just is. If I'm Hokage, I can do things, like help the orphans being abused and whatever. You could do that now. I'm going to be Hokage. Naruto said fiercely. Jiraiya groaned. Oh, Kami, help him. Look, let's not get into this right now, okay? We have other things to talk about. Seeing the blonde's disgruntled glare, he rolled his eyes. Listen, runt, you can either have a temper tantrum, or you can listen to me and learn a few things. Quote. Like what? Wind jutsu, seals, how to move extremely fast. Jiraiya said, then, noticing the look on the boy's face, braced himself for the coming storm. First things first, though, what do you know about your family? Quote. Not a lot, Naruto whispered, looking down slightly. I'm an orphan, ya know. I just know they're not around, and nobody knows anything about them. That's not quite true, Jiraiya said carefully, scratching his cheek. Actually, I suppose I should tell you I'm partly the reason you don't know anything about them. Then again, the other part of it is because of the Yondaime and his decision to completely destroy his name. Ha, Naruto managed, anger smoldering in his eyes. But he was holding his tongue. That was a surprising, but good sign. Well, don't you think it's strange that the Yondaime is never referred to by his real name? I mean, even the Sandaime is still called Satrapi by some people. Jiraiya shrugged, holding a finger up. You see, the Yondaime came from a very abusive and altogether unpleasant family, and he didn't want anything to do with them. He ran away from home at an early age and, long story short, he eventually ended up as an orphan in Konoha, but he never answered to a name. How the hell does that affect me? Naruto demanded, the anger in his voice and those eyes growing. I'm getting there, Jiraiya said, thankful that Naruto was giving him a chance to explain. So, eventually, he ended up on my team of Genin and then, through years of hard work and finally gained a name, the Yondaime. He was about 20 when that happened. Anyway, shortly after this, Uzumaki Suhina, a Kunoichi from another village that he had met earlier, turned up in Konoha pregnant with his son. Me? Naruto asked faintly, surprise etched on his face. You? Jiraiya confirmed, surprised at how calm the boy seemed. Shrugging it off, he continued the story, pleased to see the boy's rapt attention. They hid her pregnancy for fear of your life. She was from a Phorgian village after all. Albert, a foreign village that had been wiped off the face of the planet by Kase no Kuni and a Sesset weapon. A Sesset weapon. Yes. Now, to make another long story short, she's giving birth the same day that the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. Quote. Then the Yondaime, Naruto managed weakly, before glaring at Jiraiya. So, why didn't anyone ever tell me? Well, now, that's where I come in, Jiraiya said, scratching his head. See, the Yondaime was ashamed of his family and he loved your mother. So after I came back I was off trying to keep tabs on Orochimaru. At the time I did what I felt was right by him. What does that mean? Naruto growled. I destroyed all the records related to you, except for your family name. Jiraiya said with a shrug. Your mom and dad told me they wanted to use her name, partly because he wanted his birth family to get nothing from his legacy, partly because she was the last Uzumaki and they were a good clan that deserved a chance at survival. But mostly because he wanted you to have a childhood free from the overwhelming expectations and pressures of being his son. He wanted you to grow and develop as your own person. Naruto blinked, then scowled. He did not look happy, he looked downright actually. Jiraiya felt guilty, he had after all stolen Naruto's family from him. But he had related the story certain details omitted for the moment and he accepted whatever blame Naruto felt like throwing at him. So, what was his name? Naruto finally asked, his tone still holding a note of anger. I can't keep referring to him as the Yondaime in my head. Namikaze Minato, Jiraiya said, shaking his head. Or, at least, that's what he told me once. I just started calling him Arashi cause he hated his name. Can we start training now? Naruto asked, his emotions that had been so apparent before now shoved behind a mask. That was surprising to see, a genin masking such strong emotions. It was impressive and slightly worrying, it hinted at an unstable personality. Still, it wasn't his business since he wasn't Naruto's real sensei but he would talk with Anko about it. Nodding, Jiraiya climbed to his feet. Tomorrow. Today we'll go over how the Kage Bunshin training will work while we walk to the training area I have in mind. Right, Naruto said, hopping to his feet to fall into step with him. Of course, after we talk about all that, there will be girls at this waterfall, Jiraiya said, rubbing his hands together while grinning lecherously, absently noting a flash of interest in Naruto's face. Naruto muttered. No, Jiraiya said with a small shake of his head. You're a L. I'm a super L. Day 1. Wham. OWWWWW. Naruto yelped, jerking at the sharp and painful contact with his ribs. Sitting upright, he turned his dark glare on the attacker who stood over him. Up and at, bastard, Jiraiya said, glaring at him. Only pursuits get to train on their backs. Grumbling, Naruto watched the Sannin return to the fire and, side flopping back onto his sleeping mat. As if his sleep hadn't been disturbed enough, his normal dreams usually involving ramen had been replaced by dreams of his dad and B. Needless to say, Naruto had tossed and turned all night and was now quite grumpy. Are you getting up, or do I need to shove a kunai up your? I'm up. Naruto grumbled, finally getting out of bed and stumbling over to the man who was causally leaning against a tree with his arms crossed. Jiraiya, the legendary teacher of the Yondaime, the biggest L Naruto had ever met. This was also the man responsible for Naruto growing up without knowing his family, and a very large part of Naruto resented him. Still, the old man had admitted his role in the affair and had told him about his family. That helped keep Naruto from attacking, as did the symbol that Anko had carved into his arm. He wouldn't let them win, though who, them, were he didn't know, and Jiraiya was a way of winning. As for how Naruto felt about being related to the Yondaime, he felt pride, anger, sadness, loathing, all rolled up into one tight ball that was settled in the bottom of his stomach. He just couldn't decide how he should feel about the Hokage. All of the feelings he had harbored toward an unnamed family were now directed at Minato. Well, let's get started, the white-haired man said, interrupting his thoughts. Knock out those 100 clones and let's get this show on the road. Yeah, Naruto muttered and, closing his eyes, formed the familiar seal. His chakra was sluggish like it had been yesterday, he could feel the pressure building in his temples and then it was gone. Opening his eyes, he looked around and then back at the man, who snorted. Can't count. That's only 50, where's the rest? Oi, it's harder than I remember. Naruto snapped and then repeated the process, producing the missing numbers. Satisfied, he crossed his arms and glared at the man. There. Jiraiya frowned and created his 4 clones and then popped his N, addressing the Narutos. Alright, so this is how it works. You'll divide into 4 groups, 25 to a group. Then, you'll follow these dashing men. At this, the Sannin gestured at his clones. After that, you practice whatever they teach you. So, get. A few minutes later, the 2 originals were left alone in the clearing, and Naruto was grumbling about having to prepare the fire. Oi, why do I have to do this? Because I'm teaching you, Jiraiya said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Quote. Well, what the hell are we going to be working on? Nothin' for now, Jiraiya said, sitting down across from the boy as the fire finally came to life. We'll just talk for a bit about seals along with internal and external chakra. But why can't? Because Kage Bunshin training is never to be used to learn sealing or internal and external chakra, Jiraiya said with a frown. Seals are a way of altering reality, they break the rules of the universe. Mislearning anything involving them can have very nasty results. Oi, but why shouldn't the Kage Bunshin be used? I mean, wouldn't it speed things up? I could learn more about seals faster. It's because of how the information comes to you through the cage bunshin, Jiraiya explained, preparing breakfast. Let's say there's 5 steps to a seal, so you create, say, 3 clones. Now, then, all 3 learn what you need to know and then pop out of existence. You have their knowledge, their experience, true, but it'll be jumbled, and you won't be able to make heads nor tails out of it. Oh, Naruto said with a slight scowl, getting the point. He could just picture getting a seal that could alter reality wrong. Hell, fouling up a jutsu that you knew how to do was painful enough. That was just asking for trouble. Okay, so what's internal and external chakra? Good question, Jiraiya said, shifting slightly in his seat. Chakra, you do know what chakra is, right? Of course I do, Naruto said indignantly. He did know, just not the exact details. It's what we use in jutsu and stuff. Chakra, Jiraiya sighed, is the combination of physical energy and spiritual energy. Oh, yeah. Jiraiya rubbed the bridge of his nose. Now, chakra can be divided, by me at least, since I'm the only one who ever noticed, into either internal chakra or external chakra. Care to guess why I call them that? 'Cause one is external and one is internal. Naruto managed, scratching the back of his head, not really understanding what all of this meant. Right, one affects things outside of the body, and the other affects things inside the body. One example of external chakra is ninjutsu, and another is water walking. Genjutsu, on the other hand, uses internal chakra, and, of course, another example of internal chakra is channeling it into your legs for a boost in speed or strength. I see, Naruto said, nodding slightly. He actually did get the concept. Somehow, though, he got the feeling that the whole explanation was being dumbed down. Still, at least he understood what he was being told. Still didn't mean he understood why they were talking about this stuff. Now, the only reason I really bring internal and external chakra up is because of seals, Jiraiya said, as if reading Naruto's mind. Seals actually convert internal and external chakra, depending on the purpose of the seal. This is called chakra conversion ability, because of the ability of turning internal into external and external into internal. Ha! Naruto blinked, losing all understanding. What the hell are you saying? Idiot! Jiraiya muttered and then, rubbing his chin, sighed. I suppose the best explanation would be this: you breathe air, right? So, the air would be called external, you're breathing it would be conversion, and once it's inside you it becomes internal. Oh, yeah. Jiraiya nodded in annoyance. Now, then, if you breathe the air out. Well, of course, the entire process works in reverse. Do you get it? Naruto blinked, then rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He thought he got it, or at least the gist of it all, which was the important thing in his opinion. Still, he pondered it for a few more minutes, then lifted a finger, proclaiming his answer proudly. Nope. What? Well, I don't really get it, Naruto said with a shrug. Oi. But I get the general idea. This is going to be a long month, Jiraiya said, his forehead. Meanwhile, in the Anbu training area, Kakashi sighed, crouching down on the branch as he watched Ino go through a few basic warm-ups. Mentally, however, he wondered if she was truly suited for the life of a ninja. Sighing, he shook his head and started speaking. The one problem I've noticed all kenjutsu users have is that they lose the element of surprise. I sorta get that, Ino admitted as she looked up at him warily. I mean, with my sword strapped to my back it's sorta obvious what I'll be attacking with, right? Exactly, Kakashi said cheerfully, his eye curving up happily. So, since I'm not that good with a sword, I'll be helping you hone your senses. That way, even without an element of surprise you can be ready for anything. Okay, Ino said slowly, her thumb rubbing the handle of the ninjutsu she was holding. So, how exactly are you going to? A minute later she was desperately trying to deflect the pebbles Kakashi was hurling at her. A moment later the masked ninja finished, and shook his head. The girl's senses were subpar, even for an average ninja. Still, she wasn't completely horrible, so maybe there was some hope for her. What the hell were you doing? Ino screeched up at him indignantly, her skin dotted with red marks. Training you, Kakashi admitted as he pulled a small red book from his vest's pocket. But if you don't want to, just go home. Just throw the damn rocks. Ino shouted, clutching her ninjutsu tightly in front of her. Seconds later she was swinging the blade wildly. A moment later she twisted too far, overextended, and Kakashi took advantage, bouncing a rock off her. Then when she turned back he bounced one off her shoulder and another on her hand, making her drop the blade. "Don't rely on your eyes, Ino-chan," Kakashi said brightly, despite his disappointment at her dismal display. "Then how the hell am I supposed to stop the rocks?" Ino snapped, glaring at him as she retrieved her weapon angrily. "Here," Kakashi said, tossing a kunai with as of cloth wrapped around it at her feet. "Put that on and then reached out with your sixth sense, the one all ninja have, and use it to guide your weapon." Ino grumbled, bending over to retrieve the cloth, then jerked forward with a yelp as another rock bounced off her butt. "You bastard. You know, maybe you should just give this up. We have a whole month before the final exam. I could probably teach you a few basic ninjutsu, or maybe you could just go home," Kakashi said, bouncing the rocks in his hand absently while reading his book. He waited another minute, then looked at her calculatingly. "Of course, I don't think Naruto or Sasuke would notice you if you just gave up." "What?" Ino shouted, a dangerous aura beginning to radiate off her. Kakashi just offered his single-eye smile in return, which prompted Ino to angrily tie the cloth around her eyes and hold her ninjutsu out in front of her in a vice grip. "Bring it, you masked freak. Remember, don't just swing, try to stretch out with your senses," Kakashi said, hurling a pebble at her while she began to swing wildly. Stroking her shoulder he sighed. "Don't react until you feel the attack, otherwise you leave yourself wide open." Ino cursed, much to Kakashi's amusement, but readied herself. Kakashi paused, leaving her to the tension that would be coursing through her with each passing minute. Her blade moved a fraction of an inch at the sound of a rustling leaf, but Kakashi waited. Minutes stretched out before him, and then finally, he threw a pebble aiming for her forehead protector. Ino, muscles taut, moved the ninja to striking the rock with a ring. The rock shot through the air and embedded itself in a nearby tree. Ino held her blindfold off, and started cheering, waving her sword around crazily. Kakashi raised an eyebrow, reconsidering what Hayate had told them before he had s. Maybe she was a kenjutsu prodigy. "Well, that's not bad, Ino-chan," Kakashi said happily, bouncing a few more pebbles as she looked up at him. "So, shall we continue?" "Yes," Ino said, glaring at him before putting the blindfold back on. Feeling the chill race up his spine from the intent she was radiating, he chuckled. It was nice to see she was getting serious about this training, but she really didn't need to use intent during a lesson. Shaking his head he began pelting her with pebbles, marking it off to being exposed to Anko. Day 5. "Remember, the secret of sealing is the simplicity of it," Jiraiya said, holding a finger up, temples throbbing from the migraine he was developing. "Beginners tend to spell out exactly what they want a seal to do, which detracts from the simplicity. This also requires more internal chakra, which can prove very dangerous." "Then how would you do this?" Naruto snapped irritably, looking up from the complex squiggly marks in the dirt he had been writing for the last 2 hours. "It's not about how I would do it," Jiraiya explained in annoyance, poking at the early morning campfire. "It's your seal, your chakra, so it's up to you to figure out how to get what you want from the seal." Hearing the prick grumble, even as his stick returned to etching the practice seal in the dirt, the Sannin shook his head. They were 5 days into the training, and, while the cage bunshin trick was working, Jiraiya was almost frightened at how fast Naruto was progressing on that front sealing was another matter. The entire reason Jiraiya had included it was because of Gaara and, of course, because it taught patience, something Naruto sorely lacked. Yet, while most ninja never advanced very far in the art of sealing, they understood that you had to keep things simple. Naruto, however, kept overcomplicating his seals, often to the point that, if they were to be activated, the blonde would use up all his chakra, and Jiraiya just wasn't sure what the hell to do about it. He couldn't stop teaching it after all. A little knowledge was a dangerous thing, but Naruto needed to know the basics for the Gogyo seal he was planning on imparting just in case Gaara went berserk. "Ah," Naruto suddenly said, angrily jabbing his stick into the seal he had been working on. Quote. "Maybe it's time for a break," Jiraiya said, his mind wandering to the girls who would soon be arriving at the waterfall. He couldn't help but grin, blushing slightly, as he pictured those nubile be glistening in the sunlight from the oh-so-cold water. "Oi, are you daydreaming about peeping again?" Naruto said in clear irritation. Jerking out of his thoughts, Jiraiya frowned in annoyance. You have no sense of beauty, the female form is beautiful, and it must be observed. It's why I started my book, to share such special knowledge with the masses. It's just a naughty book. Naruto said in dismissal. Quote. You've never had a girlfriend, have you? Jiraiya said in annoyance, not meaning to actually insult the blonde. Just be quiet, Naruto snapped angrily, grabbing a stick and sketching another beginner seal in the dirt once more. Jiraiya paused, then looked over that boy. Kami, he should have known better than to say that, but it did make him worry about something else. At least tell me you've had a crush on a girl. Yeah, I have, Naruto admitted, pausing in his seal practice. Thank the Kami, Jiraiya managed. He had been worried for a second that the blonde had been cheated of even that experience. If so, the Sannin would have never been able to forgive himself for it. So, what was her name? None of your business, Naruto snapped, not looking up. You know, Anko was telling me a bit about that girl on your team. What's her name? Jiraiya said, feigning faulty memory as he fished for information. Blonde hair, blue eyes. Oi, Ino-chan. Naruto blinked, looking up in surprise. Yeah, I think that was her name. So, what's she like? Jiraiya asked, blinking as the blonde got a thoughtful look. Then, he listened as Naruto spent the next half hour or so talking about what Ino was like. How she could really be at times and then sorta okay other times. About how she had this insane fixation on orange being a bad color and that she dieted all the time. How badly she had been affected after her first K and so weird in the forest of death after that. About how she had been the first girl to tell him he was more important than Sasuke and to eat dinner with him. When he finished, Naruto stared at the older man curiously, scratching his nose. Oi, so what's up with her? Jiraiya hid his grin, knowing the beginnings of a crush when he heard one. Nothing, she's a female, and they're insane. But now, back to that seal. Grumbling, Naruto returned his attention to the ground. Oh yeah? Jiraiya thought in amusement as Naruto finally began to get the sealing process, he's got it bad. Shino darted left, mirrored by his Kikaichu Bunshin, then skidding to a halt both launched Themsleaves forward at the common enemy. The masked ninja neatly caught the Bunshin and twisted hurling into Shino, who in a spray of bugs, fell to the ground. Rolling OT his feet, the Aburame held his hands out, willing his bugs to form a mushy cape. A moment later as Kakashi rebounded from his failed attack, Shino shifted the wall of his Kikai into a half-dozen Kikaichu Yaris and sent them crashing after the man. Kakashi of course nimbly dodged each one, then with a rapid movement Shino was unable to follow nailed him with a punch. Rolling with the blow, Shino came to his feet, ready to continue when Kakashi held a hand up to signal a stop. You're not bad, Kakashi said after a moment, I curved up happily. Much better than Ino, and I think in terms of technique you might even surpass most Uchiha. Thank you. But, you'll still never be able to beat me or much of anyone else in anything other than a sparring match. Kakashi said seriously. Quote. I fail to see how you can determine that. Shino said, feeling a slight of annoyance. After all, he had just proven how good he was in the match against Kakashi. So true, he might not be at the same level yet, he would be there someday. Because you're always thinking, you never react. You predict, then act. Kakashi sighed, shaking his head. All logic, no emotion or instinct. Emotions cloud judgment, Shino countered, repeating what his father had told him repeatedly. It was true too, all he had to do was look at Ino. Her decisions were always clouded by her emotions. True, if you rely on only them. But, you have to realize that even the weakest of people if motivated by Satian emotions can overcome insanely powerful enemies. Maybe, for you. But I prefer to keep an even mind. Shino said, shaking his head slightly and turning away. He had to work on his Tekkenchue, it was still taking too long, his family was still a tad sluggish. Ino would kick your A, Kakashi said blandly, and when Shino stopped the masked man shrugged. Simple matter is, she might not have crisp technique like you, but she has imagination and her desires are driving her. That is an interesting opinion, Shino allowed, struggling to keep from snorting at the idiocy of that statement. He could defeat Ino any day of the week, though she was his teammate and he recepted her. A good ninja needs to know how to improvise, to let their emotions out to help them. How to use their instincts properly, not to look at everything with nothing but logic. Kakashi said, pulling his red book out and turning away. However, you do have potential. Emotions are not an aid to a ninja, Shino said, his kikai beginning to stream from the sleeves of his jacket. That's anger you feeling. Kakashi said, turning to glance at Shino over his shoulder. You feel it right, how it's trying to drive you. A ninja needs that. Shino hesitated, reining himself back in. It appeared that Kakashi might indeed have a point, but he would need to consider the matter more thoroughly. Then realizing that the silver-haired man had disappeared as he was apt to doing, Shino selected a tree and approached. There was no time like the present it appeared, and Shino had to decide who was correct, his father or the Anbu commander. Day 10. Listen carefully, brat. This Gogyo Fuin is a very special seal. This is a seal that can totally disrupt a person's chakra and knock the enemy unconscious. However, to use it, your chakra has to be larger than your target's at the moment of application. Naruto managed, his temples throbbing as he tried to understand what the old man was explaining. It was almost like trying to hold water in his hands, it was all so damn complicated. Of course, the mental fatigue from the constant cage bunshin training wasn't helping much, either. Think about it like this, Jiraiya explained, selecting a rock before gesturing at a tree branch. This rock is the Gogyo Fuin. That branch there is your target. Right. Now, then, when I throw this rock, that's me applying chakra, Jiraiya said, almost casually tossing the rock at the branch. There was a sharp crack and then, suddenly, the branch was split in two. That, of course, is the end result. I severed the connection. Naruto blinked, then nodded, grasping what the man meant. Oi, so how do you do this Gogyo Fuin? There are two ways, Jiraiya explained as he stretched. The first is the proper way, which requires two hands to use. When this version is applied, it is so painful that it not only severs your chakra, but knocks you unconscious for at least a couple of days. Oi, what about the other one? It's a slightly weaker, very crude variation. Basically, it requires a single hand to prepare, which is a useful ability if you only have one hand available. It's not as painful as the proper version, and it only disrupts your chakra, but it's still effective. Can you show me that one? Naruto asked, eyes wide at finally learning something useful from this seal training. Well, knowing how to seal fire might be useful, but he wasn't sure how. This sounded a lot more up his alley. You have to become extremely proficient with seals to perform the single-handed one, Jiraiya said with a smirk. Now, the two-handed version, well, you might be able to manage it by the end of the month. Really? Naruto said excitedly, almost rubbing his hands together. So, I need to create a couple cage bunshin and... No, Jiraiya interrupted, shaking his head. You won't be able to apply it at all, you'll just have to learn if you can do it or not in a fight. But why? Well, it's obvious, Jiraiya said in exasperation. The Gogyo Fuin, the proper version that I'm going to teach you, would dispel the cage bunshin, and that pain would ess into your head like a ton of bricks. But, that doesn't happen when the others get dispelled. No, but then again, they're not experiencing pain on a level that could turn your insides into jello, Jiraiya said flatly. You'd feel it. Weakened, of course, but you would feel it, and trust me it's not pleasant. Fine, Naruto grumbled in annoyance, accepting that for the moment. After all, if he pissed the man off too much, he'd see out early and go L. Hell, as it was, they only had another hour before Jiraiya did just that. Oi, so are you going to explain this Gogyo Fuin or what? Keep your shirt on, Jiraiya said in annoyance as he demonstrated the finger seals. The seals are simple enough, plus you just concentrate the chakra into the tips of your fingers. After that, it's just a matter of where you apply it. Some places are better than others. Naruto managed, trying to memorize the finger movements that Jiraiya was showing him. You know, where you apply the seal. There's really only three ideal targets for the Gogyo Fuin, the lower, middle and upper hara. Hara. Naruto blinked, scratching the back of his head, a feeling that Iruka had mentioned it once rattling around in his mind. A point on the body where your chakra is most concentrated, Jiraiya explained tiredly. The ideal place to apply the Gogyo Fuin would be on the lower hara, which is located at the stomach. I knew that, Naruto said defensively, before scratching the back of his head. So, why there? Sure ya did, the sage said before shaking his head. As for why the lower hara, it's safer and easier to access. The middle hara is the solar plexus, and applying the Gogyo Fuin there could cause suffocation, while the upper hara, which is the forehead, will cause the brain to s. Quote. Oh, Naruto said with a slight scowl. Yeah, so unless you have no other option, go for the stomach, Jiraiya said, lifting a finger. Using this seal is not to be taken lightly. Day 15. Oi, do I have to use leaves? Naruto asked suddenly, looking up from the latest seal that he was practicing. Seeing Jiraiya's startled look, Naruto explained. I mean, with the Shunshin no Jutsu. I've been thinking about it, and it seems like it's sorta pointless to just use leaves or other things. You want to modify the Shunshin no Jutsu? Jiraiya repeated blankly. Actually, that's pretty easy. You just substitute one element for another. Every village already does it, so it's not impossible. You should know that. Oh, Naruto said, scowling in thought. So, what element did you have in mind? Well, Naruto said slowly, finishing his latest seal, feeling a moment of pride at finally progressing. I mean, you've told me how people tend to use leaves or mist or water or something. So, why not wind? Actually, it's not a bad idea. The trick would be to combine a powerful enough wind to cover the Shunshin, especially if you use it against a Hyuga or an Uchiha. Jiraiya said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. Creative too. So, it can be done. Yeah, Jiraiya nodded. Just have to practice and figure out how to do it. It's definitely something to ponder, we'll get some clones on it tomorrow. Great, Naruto said, turning back to his seal before blinking. Oi, so, like I was saying, Anko freaked when I handed her Kakashi's book. So that's why he twitched when I tried to borrow it to double check something. Jiraiya asked, chuckling. Day 20. Jiraiya was using what was left of the S-Light to make a few final sketches to his latest book. It was slow going. Inspiration was not very common out here, especially since the girls had mysteriously stopped showing up. Not that his blonde companion cared, all that Naruto worried about was eating and training. That boy had to be the single more boring person ever. Oh sure, Naruto was talented when it came to fighting, but boring as hell otherwise. Sighing, the Sannin focused on his latest line, humming to himself as he kept his hand steady knowing a mistake here would force him to start the book over. I got dinner, Naruto suddenly shouted from behind him. Jiraiya jerked, sending his book flying and his pen sailing. Battle-tested eyes followed the fluttering descent of his precious novel until it came to rest a few inches from the simmering fire. Scrambling forward, the toad sage grasped his book desperately, flicking through the pages, looking for a stray mark. All the while, Naruto causally began to skin the fish and prepare dinner. Oi, sir, I've been wondering about. You idiot, Jiraiya shouted, leaping to his feet and bashing the boy with his free hand. Do you have any idea how close you came to ruining my novel? Hey, Naruto shouted back, while rubbing his head. It's just some damn book. You. Jiraiya fumed and then, glaring angrily, stalked back to his spot on the overturned log and began an earnest search for any stray marks. If anything had happened to this book, it was his only copy, and the publisher would hunt him down if he couldn't deliver the story. It was already 5 months overdue, and he didn't have many more excuses to delay the deadline. Oi, what's the big deal, anyway? Naruto asked in annoyance. Once you've seen one girl, you've seen them all, right? Quote. You, Jiraiya said, pity and annoyance warring inside him. You just don't get it. Whatever, Naruto said in with a shrug. Here, Jiraiya said, rummaging through his pack before tossing his last book at the blonde, who caught it deftly. You read that and tell me it doesn't inspire you. Naruto blinked, then snorted, tossing it over his shoulder. You want inspiration. Jumping to his feet, Naruto formed an unfamiliar handseal, no jutsu. Jiraiya blinked, surprised at the smoke and then was nearly given a heart attack by what he saw. Staring at him with the pout he had ever seen was a buxom young woman, her blonde hair in pigtails, while the smoke wafted strategically across her body. Genuise, Jiraiya shouted, leaping to his own feet and giving 2 thumbs up. Tehehe, the woman giggled, then winked at him, no jutsu, Anko version. If Jiraiya had been on the verge of a heart attack before, he was now on the edge of brain death, all of his bi rushing south very quickly at the sight of a completely nude Anko. Stammering, he reached out across the fire to touch the woman, when suddenly, with a small puff, she was gone, and Naruto was once more standing before him. Jiraiya felt his hope and dreams come crashing down around him, and it was all he could do to keep from Naruto. Hey, Naruto said, lacing his fingers behind his head, eyes shut in that fox-like grin. So, what did you think of my jutsu? I can use it to become anything. Since Anko said I probably would never get the hang of the henge. She helped with the variation bit, but the original, no jutsu, is all my idea. Jiraiya just stared, unable to form words or logic. There was no other word for what Naruto had done. The blonde runt had broken the legendary ninja. Hey, are you listening to me? Naruto shouted indignantly, forming the seal once again. Harem no jutsu. Jiraiya was promptly launched into the air by the bee that escaped his nose upon seeing so many beautiful women. He lay there twitching for several hours. Day 25. Oi! Naruto said, looking up from his latest sealing lesson. What is it now? Jiraiya sighed, a vein throbbing in his forehead as he paused once more in his writing. The only way he kept from smearing the blonde runt all over the forest was by remembering that they were almost done. Well, it's about the Gogyo thingy. Can ya block it? Jiraiya bit his tongue, then set his material aside, turning to face the blonde. Oh, blocking it's simple, you just have to not be hit. Simple as that, just like dodging any jutsu. Oh, Naruto muttered, turning back to his dirt seal. Don't get it wrong, though, Jiraiya continued, crossing his arms. In sealing, anything that can be done can be undone. Just, usually, you don't have enough time to undo it. Ha, Kami, why me? Jiraiya muttered in annoyance. Look, with sealing you can do anything, right? If you can seal fire, then you can release fire. Not that you want to undo every sealing you come across, hence why I haven't taught you the Gogyo Fuin or unsealed you myself. Wah! Naruto blinked, scratching his head. Wait, I'm sealed. Quote. Why do you think your chakra's been so screwed up lately? Jiraiya answered, smirking. I mean, think about it, you said that first day that it didn't used to take that much effort to make Kage Bunshin. Oi. But it's not that hard now, Naruto said, blinking. Well, that's 'cause you've gotten better at controlling your chakra, Jiraiya explained blandly. Right now, your chakra is at a lower ebb than normal, so you have to control it better to achieve the same results as normal. When you're unsealed, you'll be hell of a lot more dangerous. Really? Naruto said excitedly. Yeah, think about. Jiraiya thought for a moment, then shook his head, unable to come up with a good explanation for the boy. Sighing, he rolled his eyes and picked up his writing materials again. Just trust me on this, runt. Now, get back to work. Bastard, Naruto muttered, almost sounding fond, even as he turned back to work. Day 29 of training. Naruto was having an unusual dream. It involved ramen, but that wasn't the unusual part. That dubious honor belonged to the girl feeding him the ramen. Even that wasn't unusual, he always dreamt about Sakura feeding him ramen. No, the reason the dubious honor belonged to this girl was because he couldn't figure out who in the hell she was. Her eye color kept changing on him, and her hair, too. Even her features would shift every so often. Then, finally, his mind started latching onto a name for this girl. Wham! Naruto jerked awake, clutching his stomach and gasping for air. Pain coursed through his body, and his vision blurred, but he was used to pain and focused through it. Standing over him, arms crossed and looking as pissed off as any Oni, was his current teacher, Jiraiya. Good, you're awake, the man said blandly, as if he was talking about the weather. We can finally get this tea over with. Finally able to breathe, Naruto moved, slowly rolling away from the man and rising into a half crouch. Oi, what was that for? I was waking you up, Jiraiya answered without an expression. Today's the last day of your training, and. Wah, Naruto managed, his mind still slightly hampered by sleep. Then he felt his eyes go wide in realization. It's been a month. He started counting on his fingers, before a jolt ran through him. It has. Yeah, Jiraiya agreed in annoyance. Now, as I saying, with what I have planned for today, You're going to need as much time as possible. Shoving his surprise down, along with his despair at realizing he had gone a month without ramen, the blonde shifted into serious mode. Ero Sennin was talking as if he had something new for them to do, and Naruto was not about to screw up anything. Even though the lessons had been boring, often interrupted with perversion, the blonde knew just how strong he had gotten training with the man. This is actually going to be pretty simple. We're going to spar. The man smirked and crossed his arms. Sort of, anyway. We are? Naruto asked, jumping to his feet, a rush coursing through him at the thought of finally fighting. Woo! Get ready to get your kicked. I said, sort of. Jiraiya interrupted with a snort. You're going to be restricted to what I taught you during this last month, but no Kage Bunshin, anything Anko taught you or anything else more advanced than the academy basics. Oi, wait a minute. Naruto said angrily, realizing just how large a handicap that was putting on him. Why do I have to? Because I want to gauge how well you've learned what I taught, Jiraiya said. Plus, I won't be fighting back, just dodging or blocking. I want to test you, not KU. Hey is for horses, Jiraiya said. Now, your goal of this test is to hit me, I mean a solid hit, too, by lunchtime. Test? Naruto asked, scowling as he thought about the academy. What happens if I don't hit you? Then I KU. Then I go into Konoha and K Anko, Iruka, that Ino girl, the old man at the ramen stand, and everybody else you told me about. Jiraiya said, as intent rolling off him. I'll K everyone you hold dear and anyone that tries to stop me. Naruto opened his mouth to protest, to point out that he couldn't do that. But he felt the intent as the man had spoken, and he knew, instinctively, that this man was serious. That he really would go into Konoha and K everybody, all because Naruto failed to hit him. If you have any delusions about this being a bluff, let me say this, I have no real ties left in this village. I don't care about anyone in that village, and I'm a Sannin. I could K the Hokage if I felt like it. Which means I'd have no problem with a Chunin, Genin and Jonin. Naruto gulped, a chill racing up his back. Suddenly, he felt all this weight settling onto him, making him want to bow from the pressure. Or run screaming. He had so many lives depending on this, it wasn't even funny, but he had no choice but to fight. So, let's start, shall we? No sooner had those words left the man's mouth than Naruto exploded into action with a hasty K's no Yaiba, which Jiraiya dodged easily, followed by a Shunshin to where the Sannin had dodged. Naruto thrusted blindly with a kunai when he arrived, but Jiraiya grabbed his wrist and shoved it down while jumping over him. Tumbling forward from the momentum, Naruto managed a shoulder roll and whipped around, firing off a series of kunai and shuriken. The Toad Master dodged and jumped easily, and Naruto scrambled back to his feet, only to find the man twirling one of the kunai around a finger casually. Not bad. Not good, but not bad, Jiraiya said before tossing the bladed weapon aside. Well, let's get back to it, shall we? Growling, Naruto attacked yet again, using tricks, attacks and combos one after the other. He could only do so much with the rules that the stupid bastard had set down, but he couldn't just give up. He dug deep into his bag of tricks and thought about how best to apply them. Jiraiya lazily dodged through the latest barrage of jutsu and weapons, almost yawning. You know, I wonder if Anko will scream. No, I think she'll cry, because I'll tell her you could have stopped me and didn't. You won't touch her. Naruto roared and hurtled headfirst at the man, only to be leaped over. However, that was exactly what Naruto had wanted. The man landed between two glowing seals, which exploded into a circle of flame that quickly s out. You know, Jiraiya commented standing unharmed on the edge of the circle, I'm impressed. You adapt, you innovate, improvise, all within a few seconds. But, you still haven't hit me. Naruto charged once more, performing several rapid Shunshin's, trying to confuse the man, then came out of the last one directly into a heavy style attack. Jiraiya calmly blocked the blow, then jumped away with a slight push, as if he had done nothing more than swat a fly. Naruto, however, collapsed to one knee, surprised at how weak he felt after performing so many rapid Shunshin's. You know, that wasn't bad, Jiraiya said conversationally. I think if you ever get unsealed, you shouldn't have a problem doing that a couple of times a day. Of course, to get unsealed, you'll have to hit me. Maybe I'll K Iruka at his desk. That sounds reasonable, right? Gathering his strength, Naruto launched into yet another attack, and then another. On and on he went. When one attack failed, he tried another. Jiraiya, however, treated each one with equal contempt, often talking about how he would kill Anko or Iruka, always in great detail. Naruto was getting desperate. His own body was telling him how close to lunch it was getting. His time was almost up, and he still hadn't hit the man. He had to do something, think of something, anything. There had to be a trick that he was overlooking. All Naruto knew was that he wanted nothing more than to beat Jiraiya's face in for threatening his friends. Shaking it off, he desperately tried to look over the last few hours and find some pattern. Hebi was out. Naruto had learned over the last few hours that it was useless against an opponent who defended instead of attacked. His wind blade was pointless, the Shunshin was draining him like crazy for some reason, Bunshin wouldn't be any help, and a henge was so unstable that he couldn't rely on it. You know, I've been thinking about that Ino girl. She'll probably scream. She sounds like a screamer. I'll have to sew her lips shut, then, Jiraiya said conversationally in between attacks. Oh, well, just means she'll have to smile through her tea, huh? This spurred Naruto, with a roar of fury, to greater heights of desperation. He had almost forgotten that her life was included in this fight. If he failed, then. No, he couldn't let them mess. In mid-attack, he suddenly had a realization, followed by an idea. A very stupid idea. All of his attacks so far had been head-on. He had allowed the bastard to keep pissing him off so much that he hadn't thought of it. The answer was simple, a three-step attack. That was the only answer. Charging forward, Naruto pulled a kunai and twisted his body, preparing for yet another attempt at using the Hebi style. Jiraiya, of course, causally sidestepped the attack and reached out to grab the boy's weapon only to have his hand go through the arm. Bunshin. Turning, the man sidestepped the other Naruto that was sailing through the air, only to have it turn into a log with an exploding note attached. Kawarimi. Leaping aside, Jiraiya twisted to avoid a blast of S-air. K's no Yaiba, and then was promptly attacked by yet another Bunshin, who had an arm pulled back, and he reached out to dispel it, only to have it suddenly perform a Shunshin and hit him in the face as he turned. Jiraiya stumbled, then, sensing the follow-up attack, lashed out. Naruto felt the air rush out of his lungs as the hand S into his stomach. There was a moment in which he was weightless and then was sent flying through the air before he crashed to the ground and skidded. Coming to a stop against the roots of a tree, he struggled to breathe, but he was sure about one thing. He had hit that sick bastard. Then, he promptly passed out. Sighing, Jiraiya poked at the lunch he had prepared, staring curiously at the still unconscious blonde. It had been 3 hours since the test, 3 hours since Jiraiya had struck out and unsealed him. Yet, Naruto still wasn't awake. Snorting, Jiraiya shook his head, marking it off to having merely exhausted himself. Not surprising, considering the training he had been put through, which, in retrospect, might have been a bit too much for the boy. Finishing his meal, he set it aside and turned back to his book, pen twirling between his fingers. This was the first chance he had to actually get some serious work done on his book. He had forgotten just how demanding teaching could be. Shrugging it off, he turned his mind to the more important task of writing the delicate threesome. 3 hours later, he was giggling, absorbed in his carefully crafted world. He was just getting to the interesting part where Parry's lover, Akane, had just come back after a long trip, only to find her in the arms of her most hated rival when Naruto suddenly leapt to his feet with a shout. Jerking, Jiraiya fumbled with his book, then glared at the boy, who was glaring back at him. About time you got up, Jiraiya said after a moment, turning back to his precious novel. I fixed ya some lunch. Oi, you freakin' threatened, Naruto paused, then blinked in surprise. Lunch. Yeah, Jiraiya said dismissively. Figured you'd be hungry after that test. Yeah, well, you didn't, Naruto paused, sounding uncertain as he picked up his food. You know. You're still alive, ain't ya? Jiraiya said without looking up, a feeling of annoyance flashing through him. You hit me, I unsealed you. Your training's done, just go back to Konoha and make Anko proud. Oi, but why'd you threaten them? Naruto demanded around his food. Jiraiya paused, frowning as he considered that question. On the one hand, he wanted to be done with the brat as quickly as possible, and, on the other, the boy did deserve to know the reason behind the test. Snapping his book closed, the toad hermit turned to stare at the blonde. To show you something that my sensei kept hammering into my head. Ha, look, a shinobi is strongest when he's trying to protect something important to him, Jiraiya explained slowly, scratching his nose lightly. Knowing Anko, she's probably never mentioned that protecting something important makes you stronger. Not really. Well, that's not surprising, but it's true. You should know it. You do know it, actually, Jiraiya said, snorting. You just don't know it consciously, but the fight with Orochimaru in the Forest of Death shows that you know it. What are you talking about? You're strong for a genin, I'll admit that. But that's because you drive yourself and work on everything twice as hard as most people. But Orochimaru has over 50 years of experience, is a Sannin, and a genius. A genin, no matter how strong, is nothing to him. But I don't remember it all, but I know hurt him. Naruto said angrily. Yes, but that's only because you were trying to protect Anko. That's what made you strong enough to stand up to him, Jiraiya said, climbing to his feet. I threatened Anko, Iruka, and that Ino girl because you talked about them more than everybody else. I had to make you realize consciously what you knew instinctively. Quote. Oh, Naruto said, looking down slightly with a scowl. Plus, like I told you at the beginning of the month, as you were then, you could never be Hokage. Every Hokage knows that they have to protect the village and those precious to them, more than anything. Picking his various items up, he turned back to Naruto, who was scowling at the fire. You talked about being Hokage, but all your reasons weren't good enough. Quote. Everyone is precious to a Hokage, Naruto said in a low tone, snapping a stick to toss into the fire. That old Billy Goat said that to me when I bugged him about why he bothered with me. Yeah, Jiraiya said, smirking. See, you knew it just had to be reminded. Now, go back to the village, get some sleep, and let me know how things go. Oi, you're leaving. Yeah, I got to get my book to the publisher. Otherwise, I'll have wasted all my data gathering. Seeing the disappointment on the boy's face, he sighed. Don't worry, I'll be back. I got a few small things to take care of here. Oh, Naruto said, grinning slightly. Turning, Jiraiya started off, whistling an upbeat tune, thinking about the freedom he now had. All that extra time to work on his precious novel. Hell, he could probably even manage to start the next novel. Then, he heard Naruto call his name, and he paused, turning back to wonder what that runt was going to say. That boy was a genius. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.